Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Someone very interesting has just left a 14-year career at a public institution in the United States of America to join a company called Palantir. This was really interesting. We're going to get right into it, and I want to talk about the implications of why this person, whose name is Greg Little, left the DoD, the Department of Defense, for Palantir, what implications this has on the trajectory of Palantir's governmental business, and overall, what is the strategy Palantir is deploying in order to continue to essentially maintain their moat in the governmental space. Deputy at Pentagon's Data and AI Office to depart for Palantir. Those beautiful letters, AI, someone at the intersection of AI and governments is now going for Palantir. Greg Little, the Pentagon's inaugural Deputy Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Officer for Enterprise Platforms and Business Optimization, is leaving his position at the end of July. One of the senior leaders of the Pentagon's Chief Digital and AI Office, or CDAO, is departing his post at the end of the month for a job with Palantir. Greg Little, Deputy CDAO for Enterprise Platforms and Business Optimization, was one of the first officials the DoD named to the office before it reached its full operating capability in June 2022. The DoD stood up the office last February to help align its AI-focused efforts across its sprawling component agencies. So one could imagine this person who's been with the DoD for about 14 years has been doing a lot of things in the digital space for the Department of Defense. In February 2022, they officially established sort of like a headquarters or AI type of office, and he was one of the senior executives there. His job is that he oversees the office's business analytics and strategic insights, enterprise platform and capabilities, and strategy operations and customer success divisions. Little did not respond to a request for comment. He began working with the DoD in 2009 as a program analyst with the Pentagon's now defunct Business Transformation Agency. Over the course of his career at the department, Little has served as the Director of Chief Financial Officer Data Transformation Office, as a team lead of DoD's Business Integration Office, and as a solution architect for the Defense Agency's initiative. Now, a representative from Palantir did not respond to a request for comment. The software and data analytics company has a long history of working with the Pentagon and federal defense agencies, including receiving a multi-year contract from the U.S. Special Operations Command last month, which was valued at $110 million, to deliver technology solutions to support enterprise capabilities. Little's impending departure comes after the chair and ranking member of the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Cyber Information Technologies and Innovation sent a letter to the CDAO officer Craig Martle last month expressing concern about the office receiving the lowest workforce score of any competent agency across the Pentagon. So, a couple of things to discuss here before we dive deeper into this. It seems like Greg Little most likely had some experience working with Palantir software, given that Palantir software is pretty much infiltrated across the entire Department of Defense. So he is probably very familiar with Palantir, really familiar with their software, probably has used their software in a variety of use cases. And that last paragraph shows that maybe things at this office at the DoD are not going as good as one would expect. Maybe there's some turmoil, maybe things aren't as efficient. And he was like, you know what? I've given public service for the past 14 years to the DoD. Maybe I want to go to the actual company creating the technology infrastructure that I've been using and that has been such a pivotal part of how the DoD has been able to maintain its defense, digital, and AI strategy. And as a result of that, he is going to Palantir. If we go to his LinkedIn, as you can see, Arlington, Virginia, so very close to where everything's happening in DC. And he's been pretty much leading everything in the context of enterprise resource planning, defense agencies. He's been a program analyst, a business transformation agency. He was a consultant at IBM for 2 years before he went to the DoD. So this guy understands data, this guy understands AI, and this guy also understands strategy. Now, what he's doing at Palantir, I'm not necessarily sure. There hasn't been any official PR for what he's going to be doing at Palantir, but what I would imagine he's doing at Palantir is something that the people on the Palantir Federal Advisory Board likely want him to do. The Federal Advisory Board was comprised of a global health of national security experts with firsthand experience facing America's most urgent threats. Their perspectives on today's global health, defense, intelligence, and homeland security challenges enable Palantir to continue to meet the evolving and complex needs of our U.S. government partners. This is really important. For those that don't know what the Federal Advisory Board is, which was established about a year ago, it's basically a ton of really important people that have a ton of power and connections working exclusively with Palantir. You've got Dr. Deborah Bricks, who is a former White House COVID response coordinator. You've got a former acting deputy secretary of defense. You've got a former command of U.S. Africa Command. You've got former secretary of the U.S. Air Force, former commander of the U.S. Special Operations Command. You've got the former vice commandant, U.S. Coast Guard, and former TSA administrator. You've just got a ton of people who are super, super important in regards to what the government is doing. Now, what is the point of the Federal Advisory Board? My hypothesis is that when Palantir is gunning for a governmental contract, And when they are in the running for it, either in terms of competing against some other vendors or, they just have to close the deal, I would imagine they call up the people on this advisory board and they take advice because it's an advisory board. And they're like, hey, can you either talk to this person, or can you tell us how to talk to this person, or what is the best way to get in contact with this person? Do you have this person's email? They probably ask for a variety of different things from these people. And, I think if you're on this advisory board, I don't know if this is a paid position. Maybe it's paid, maybe it's not. Maybe they pay these people $200,000-300,000 a year each. But the point is, you've got this asset that is attached to your business. And by the way, every corporate company has an asset attached to their business that essentially does lobbying for them in order to close bigger deals. Like that $110 million that they got from this Space Systems Command last couple of weeks ago. It was sole sourced, not single sourced, which means there was no competition for them to be able to actually get those contracts. One could still argue that the Federal Advisory Board and their ties with the government and different connections they had helped them streamline that process to get those deals. Government revenue in Q1 2022 went up 20% year over year compared to commercial that only went up 15%. So government revenue is actually incredibly important for Palantir, although commercial is expanding even more, and we know that commercial is where the real TAM is. The government business is huge. It's revenue that's sticky. It increases your total contract value. It increases your billings, and it essentially allows Palantir to be able to do what they need to do without having to worry about always closing more commercial clients. So for example, if you have a quarter where you wanted 40 clients and you only got 20 of them, and so you missed on 20 clients, you weren't able to close those deals, but you have 3 or 4 governmental deals that are worth a couple $100 million over 5 years, and you're able to annualize that. There's a really good way for you to be able to show Wall Street, hey, we're still bringing in revenue, even if it's not a ton of commercial clients. We've got all this government revenue, and if you give us some time, we're going to be able to expand into the commercial sector. I think this is also another way for Palantir to do sales. I mean, getting this Greg Little guy on board just means that he's going to be helping with the lobbying. He's going to be helping with the strategy. A lot of times it's just, you get paid a lot of money to be able to think strategically about a problem and solve some issues. I mean, I had a consulting firm when I graduated college, and it was around public speaking and debate. And I remember working with this client, and the client was not even asking me for public speaking and communication advice, which was kind of the core thing that I taught. They had a business, and they were like, hey, can you give me some strategy consulting on how I can expand this business? And that was the first time where I realized that you can get paid for giving advice that is valuable to people if that advice can also make them money, and they can take that advice and genuinely implement it. And so I would get paid by the hour to just sit there and talk and explain certain aspects of how to make their business better. Now, I wasn't the smartest business guy in the world, but the market that they were attacking, I knew very intimately, and that was the education debate space. So because I knew that market, at 19 years old, I knew that market like I was 50 years old. That market was just, I understood that market really well. I actually had a company in the past a lot of people don't know about. It's called debatedrills.com. I left that company sophomore year because I had disagreements with the founder of the company. But that was a company that scaled from 20,000 in revenue to 60,000 in revenue. So we 3x the revenue in 1 year, and we quadrupled our clients. We hired 4 more employees. I was associate head director of that startup. Unfortunately, I never negotiated equity because I didn't even know what equity was. I didn't know you could own part of a business. I had a revenue profit sharing agreement. So I made some decent money, but I didn't actually own any part of the company. So when I was 19 years old, I was operating a educational tech startup. It was called debatedrills.com. You guys can go to it today. It's just online tutoring for debate. And it was pretty innovative because no one had created a Khan Academy for debate that was for profit and actually monetized debate and public speaking education at scale across the country without having to actually have a physical location. And so given those 2 years of experience, the next client that I was consulting with that actually had some physical branches, they would literally pay me just to be able to tell them how to expand in different sectors and work with different things. And when it comes to lobbying, the amount of lobbying that they had to do to be able to get their business to expand in certain areas, especially because they were in the education space. And when you're mixing a private company with public funded educational initiatives, there's always a little bit of conflict and tension there. And I had dealt with that for the first 2 years of college when I had worked in that Debate Drills tech education ed tech startup. And so I learned how to navigate that. And that advice was incredibly valuable to them. And as a result of that, they would pay me to be able to help them understand how to expand their business in that sector. The whole point of what I'm saying here is, even if they're paying this guy just to be like, hey, how exactly do we get this contract in this subsidiary of this agency in the DoD? Can you give us a little bit more insight on what we need to do, what they care about? You worked there for 14 years. What do they need to get the procurement process done? And he's able to give insight on that. That's like a 10, 15, 20x ROI if that's a $30, $40 million contract and they're paying this guy $1 million a year. And so this is why it's important for Palantir to be able to establish those people, and get them on board, and essentially be able to work with them in a more meaningful way. So Greg Little joining Palantir. Those are my thoughts. Makes a lot of sense. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Ultimately, I want to see Palantir get more and more of these people. Like, stack the freaking deck. Get everybody and anybody who has relevance to the contracts that you know you need to get over the next 10 years and get them on board. Make them associated with the brand and make sure they don't go anywhere else. Because, you know, when you have 14 years of experience in the DoD, you'll have a lot of companies that want a lot of government contracts that will be willing to pay you a lot of money to be associated with them. And I'd rather have Palantir, who has the best software, to be associated with the people that can get the best software in the hands of the government. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks so much for listening and watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.